This is part 3 of topic 12, and in this particular presentation we're going to look at a case study of the Australian mining boom. And we're going to use the open economy model to explain what was happening in the Australian economy during the mining boom. So what I've got here is Australia's current account balance, and the period that we're focusing on is the start of the mining boom, so from the early 2000s through to 2008 when the GFC hit. So what we can see is that prior to the mining boom, the current account balance was around about, first of all, it was a deficit, it was around about 2% of GDP. But then as we got into the mining boom in the early 2000s, the current account balance actually worsened and the current account balance actually blew out. And the deficit became around about 6% of GDP between 2003 through to about 2007, 2008. In 2008, the GFC hit and the current account balance actually improved to around about 1.5–2% of GDP again. We can also see this in the trade balance. Moving into the mining boom in 2001, 2002, 2003, the yellow line, the trade balance actually deteriorated and it stayed at quite a low level. So the trade balance was in deficit, stayed that way right through to 2008. Now, if you go out and ask someone on the street what impact a mining boom would have on Australia's trade performance, then that person would probably suggest that it would improve our trade performance, improve our trade balance. If you ask an economist the same thing, what impact would a mining boom have on a country's trade performance, the economist, chances are, would suggest that it would deteriorate the country's trade performance. So how do we reconcile what we're seeing here with logic? Well, first of all, we can see that there wasn't much impact on the net income balance. That remained, it did dip a little bit during 2003, 2004, 2005, right through to 2007. But what we're really concerned with is why the trade balance actually deteriorated, and therefore why the current account balance actually deteriorated during one of the largest mining booms the country's ever had. I mean, surely a mining boom means significantly more exports because prices of exports are higher, because volumes of exports are higher, and surely that should lead to the trade balance actually becoming positive. Certainly not negative and deteriorating from around about 2000. So how do we explain this fact that the current account balance was in deficit, i.e. negative, right throughout this mining boom period? To explain it, we need to go to this model. So we start off at this equilibrium here with a real exchange rate RER1 and a current account deficit of $20 billion. It's negative, the number here is -20, so it's a deficit. Now, when we went into the mining boom period, two things happened. First of all, the level of net exports from Australia increased. Initially because prices increased, prices of iron ore and coking coal increased, but then second, the volumes of iron ore and coking coal that we were exporting were increasing as well. So the net effect of higher prices and volumes of iron ore and coking coal, as well as other commodity exports from Australia, the combined effect of the increases in prices and quantities shifted net exports out to the right to NX2. However, investment also increased because the mining companies, the energy companies, were undertaking significant investment to increase their productive capacity, their ability to actually produce and export. And so when investment spending in the country increases, that actually shifts this vertical line to the left. So investment has increased from I1 to I2. Now the new equilibrium here is to the left of the original equilibrium. So what's actually happened is the trade balance has gone from a deficit of 20 billion to a deficit of 40 billion. And presumably the current account's going to deteriorate by a similar amount as well. So what we've got here is the movement from the initial equilibrium here to the new equilibrium at the higher real exchange rate. The current account deficit has actually deteriorated. Now the main reason it's deteriorated is because of this big increase in investment. This line, this vertical line moving to the left, not only represents higher investment spending, but in the context of this model, more importantly, it represents an increase in the inflow of foreign savings into Australia to finance the higher level of investment. So if investment goes up and our domestic savings stays the same, we need more foreign savings coming into the country to finance the higher level of domestic investment. And that larger inflow of foreign savings into Australia is represented by a leftward shift in the vertical line, S minus I, and that is what is driving the exchange rate up. So as all of this money is pouring into Australia from overseas to pay for the capacity expansion, the investment boom in the mining industry, that drives the exchange rate up, and it's the exchange rate which is driven up which leads to a deterioration of the current account. So exports tend to increase, imports fall, and net exports deteriorate. So if you can remember back to the early to mid 2000s, the Australian dollar went from 0.6 US cents up to about 1.1 US dollars. So that's the appreciation that I'm talking about, the movement from RER1, about 60 US cents, up to about $1.10, $1.15 from memory, RER2. So even though we were exporting more mining goods and services, as these foreign savings were flooding into Australia to pay for the investment boom, or to finance the investment boom, the exchange rate went up, and the higher exchange rate meant that exports in other industries, the non-mining and energy industries, they were falling, and imports were increasing substantially as well. So the net effect was actually a deterioration in net exports. So what's happening in this diagram as we move from one equilibrium to the other is three main things. Mining and energy exports are going up. Exports from other industries are going down because of the resulting appreciation of the exchange rate, and imports are going up substantially as well. The net effect is a reduction in net exports or a deterioration of the current account. So what I've got there is the chain of causality. Just to remind you what is going on there, the net effect is an appreciation, large appreciation, and a larger current account deficit. Now we can use this result to actually generalize, and what I've got here is that countries with higher savings rates than loanable funds demand, now loanable funds demand is just investment, so countries which have S being greater than I, in terms of this diagram, their vertical S minus I line will lie to the right of the diagram. So these countries with high savings rates, they will have vertical lines, S minus I lines, which lie to the right of the diagram. They will therefore have positive net foreign investment. They will have low exchange rates and positive levels of net exports. Now, countries that do have high savings relative to loanable funds demand, these are countries that have excess savings after they have financed their own domestic investment spending. And those savings flow overseas, and that's what creates the positive net foreign investment. Positive net foreign investment means excess savings flowing overseas And as that money flows overseas, as that excess savings flow overseas, that is then labelled net foreign investment. Okay, down the bottom, however, we've got countries such as the US, the UK and Australia. We have generally low savings rates which are lower than our investment spending. So therefore we have negative net foreign investment. That means that money is flowing into the US, the UK and Australia to supplement the low domestic savings rates. We have high exchange rates, or exchange rates which are higher than they would be than if we saved a lot more. And these relatively high exchange rates, because we don't save much, means that we have negative net exports, or typically current account deficits.